Hello class, we're in page 281 in our arithmetic books. Today we're going to learn how to divide with rounding off. So we did learn how to round decimals, and we also did learn how to divide decimals. What we are going to do today, we're going to combine both lessons, and we are going to divide with rounding off. So first off, let's go and read the fact as we are dividing with rounding off. The fact says, often division will not terminate divide out evenly, no matter how many zeros are annexed. In this case, divide to one decimal place more than the needed decimal place and round off. Let's go and read that last sentence one more time. In this case, divide to one decimal place more than the needed decimal place and round off. So, if they tell you to round to the nearest tenth, what comes after tenths? We have the hundredths place. So that means we are going to divide all the way to the hundredths place and then round to nearest tenths. If it's telling me to round to nearest hundredths, what comes after hundredths? We have the thousandths place. So we are going to divide all the way to the thousandths place only, and then we are going to round to nearest hundredths. It's going to make more sense once we move on to our example. Let's go to move on to our example. So it says round to the nearest tenth. So what comes after tenths? We have the hundredths. That means we're going to divide all the way to our hundredths place. But first off, let's go to review super fast. We did learn that our decimal point, we have an imaginary decimal point always at the very end of our number. That means whenever we are dividing decimals, what do? We are going to bring that imaginary decimal point up and place our decimal point before we actually divide. Now let's go ahead and divide. How many times can 3 go into 5? 3 can go into 5 once. So let's go ahead and subtract that 3. 5 minus 3 equals 2. We bring down the 6. We have 26. How many times can 3 go into 26? We have 8 times. 8 times 3 equals 24. Then we have 2. Once we added our decimal point though, that means we can go ahead and what? Annex 0. So let's go ahead and annex that 0. And let's keep dividing. How many times can 3 go into 20? We have 6 times. 6 times 3 equals 18. And then we have 2 again as a remainder. And then what we're going to do, again, annex 0 until we have no remainder. But for this division, even though I keep adding zeros, my division will never end. So it's telling me though, round to the nearest tenths. What comes after tenths? Comes hundredths. So I'm going to divide all the way to my hundredths place. So far, I have tenths, and I still need one more to go to the hundredths place. So let's go ahead and add one more number. How many times can 3 go into 20? That's 6 times. 18, we subtract, and then we have a remainder of 2 again. Okay. So again, let's see right here. It's asking me for the tenths. I go one more than what they asked me. That means I go all the way to the hundredths. Do I have all the way to the hundredths? Yes, I do. Now let's go ahead and round to the nearest tenths. If our hundredths place right here is 5 or greater, what do? I drop that number and then I add 1 to my tenths place. So my final answer is going to be 18.7. As you can see, whenever they're asking me to a tenths place, I'm going to find all the way to the hundredths place, and then I am going to round. If your last number is 5 or greater, you drop that number and add 1 to the previous number. If it is less than 5, what you're going to do, you're just going to drop that number. Now let's go ahead and move on to our next example. I have round to the nearest hundredths. So this time is all the way to the hundredths. Now, what comes after the hundredths place value? We have thousandths. So whenever I am dividing this time, I'm going to divide all the way to the thousandths place value. So let's go ahead and divide. I have 3 divided by 11. How many times can 3 go into 11? We have 3 times. But before that, I did forget one step. What step did I forget? I forgot to add my decimal point. Remember, there is an imaginary decimal point, so I'm going to bring that imaginary decimal point up. And then after that, I'm going to start dividing. Let me make that decimal point better, though. So 3 can go into 11 3 times. So we're going to write down that 3. 3 times 3 equals 9. And then I subtract, I have a 2 as my remainder. Once I added my decimal point, I can go ahead and annex zeros to finish my division. How many times can 3 go into 20? We have 6 times. 18. Subtract, remainder 2. I annex a 0 again because I don't want a remainder, and I keep doing my division. 18, again, remainder 2. I annex a 0. And then we have all the way again. 6 times 3 equals 18. And then remainder 2 again. So it's asking me for the hundredths place. I go one more, which is the thousandths place. I have the tenths, hundredths, and the thousandths. Did I divide one more than what they are asking me for? Yes, I did. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to round. Let's go ahead and round that number, 3.666. So let's go ahead and round to the nearest hundredths. I look at my last number right here. If my last number is 5 or greater, I'm going to drop that number and add 1 to my previous number. As you can see, 6 is greater than 5. So I'm going to drop that number and going to add 1 to my previous number. And my final answer is going to be 3.67. So the first thing is read the instructions. If they're telling you to round to the nearest tenths, you're going to divide all the way to the nearest hundredths. If they tell you to round to the nearest hundredths, you're going to divide all the way to the thousandths place because you have to divide one more than what they are telling you to. So the first step is always read the instructions. It's going to be the same for any other classwork or for any test or for any quiz. The first step should always be read the instructions. So it's very important for you to read the instructions and know what you have to do. Okay? Are you rounding to the nearest tenths or are you rounding to the nearest hundredths? After that, we divide and then we round at the very end. That's going to be our lesson today. You're going to go all the way, for today's classwork, what you're going to do, you're going to do page 281. You're going to do all of those problems. And then you're going to submit it to Class Dojo. Goodbye.